Roger, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. Hello to everyone.
Knox, good to see you. Kaya,
Yeah, nice to hear you and see you.
yeah. I'm glad to be around.
Yeah, you know, sometimes that's the best day just to be here.
There are days.
Good to see you, Chet.
You as well, Kaya. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Riding out a merger at work, so life
Oh.
is interesting.
Yeah, I don't envy you. Those are highly stressful times, or they were when I was actively involved in them
Still are.
on both sides. Yeah. But if everything works out right, we won't break 100 today. We'll be under 100, staying cool. That'll work too. All right, let me get my slide deck up and get ready. We're not going to go just yet. We got a couple of minutes to go. Let me get it out of here. Come back to it. There we go. Okay, according to my clock, it's time to go. So welcome everyone to the June version of Apex for Lunch. We titled to this month's session as Strike, Drop, and Unload. And I think you'll see why in a minute. But there's a whole lot going on out there. There's so much happening, and it seems that some streams are getting deeper and wider, and others are thinning out, and things seem not to be moving all in the same direction. So that's why the lack of clarity in the title. We'll start where we normally do by just checking back in on the pandemic. I know most of us would like to think that it's over, but it's not. One of the things that we're seeing now is that there are, we're seeing an increase in the reported positives from self-testing and from test centers. And so the reported numbers of infections is going up. You can see here, so far this year, it's been about 26 million infections here in the US. But if you look at the deaths, 2 years ago, we would have been seeing death rates somewhere in the 6 to 8, maybe even 10%. And now we're seeing that kind of increase, and we're seeing just a minimal change in the deaths. Well, I shouldn't say minimal change. That's 800,000 people so far this year, but we're in the 6 months. That's less than 100,000 a month. We were seeing weeks with more than 100,000 dying. So the death rate has come down. The hospitalization rates have come down, but the virus is still out there, and people are still getting impacted with it. We're seeing the same thing in Mexico, and we're seeing the same thing in other countries. So the change in the different variants has impacted us. But here in the El Paso border area, we're seeing an increase in positive testing. Now, the public health people are saying that we don't get to see all of the change with the home testing kits that you can buy at the drugstore and check to make sure that you are or are not positive. Most people are not telling the government if they're not positive, and they're not telling the people, the government, if they are positive. They're not reporting. So our reported numbers now are starting to deteriorate in the quality. We're only getting a snapshot, a thumbnail of what's actually going on. And so the public health people think that the actual incidence of infection is higher than reported. That's been their position since the beginning of all of this. It's still their position. It hasn't changed much. So those of us, I don't personally have a problem, but my wife does. So I don't want to bring anything home. I wear a mask most of the time when I'm out, and most of the time when I'm with people, I'm masked. That doesn't mean anybody else has to do it. It's just how I've decided I'm going to live mine. So choose well and choose how you want to go forward. We start with strike. It was kind of interesting. Earlier this month, the truck drivers in Korea went out on strike because of the high cost of fuel. They were not able to raise their prices, but the cost of operation went higher. And so instead of trying to go back and renegotiate contracts and everything, they just went out on strike. Well, the government, after about 3 days of that, said, well, we can't live with this because we're not getting freight off the boats, we're not getting freight on the boats, and we've got all these cars backing up. We need to do something. And so they took the military and got the military started. So the military are driving the freight trucks around. The question I haven't been able to get an answer to, but I think I know the answer, is who's paying for the fuel? And I have to believe that the government is paying for the fuel and the troops are driving the trucks. So the truckers are on strike, but their trucks have been taken and they're being driven by government troops. So they're not making any money, but at least they're not losing money either. So I'm not sure that strike's going to come to an end anytime soon. But Korea isn't the only place. Spain has had a number of trucking strikes. They started earlier this year and they're continuing on a number of different issues. If you're not aware, a large portion of the low-cost manufacturing for the EU is done in Morocco, and the trucks go to the dock, and they don't have tractor trailers. They have rack body trucks. They drive them or vans, and they drive those to the ferry boat dock. They get on the ferry boat. They sail across the Straits of Gibraltar and make land in Spain, and then drive up to Zaragoza, Spain, and they break bulk there in a big logistics operation in Zaragoza. So the truck drivers have been feeling like they're not getting paid because they don't get to move that freight up to Zaragoza, and then they don't get to move all of that freight out of Zaragoza. And so the Spanish truck drivers have been striking about that. In Turkey, it's been fuel costs and government taxes and lack of government support. And then in India, it's just been general. They've been striking. And so we're seeing different areas of the manufacturing world that have been impacted, not by a lack of employees or a lack of materials, but by a lack of logistics. They can't move their product. So then the question is, why strike? The rising fuel cost is the latest insult to the truckers, and that's the way the truckers in Korea feel. but that's also the way the truckers here feel. Fuel costs have gone up, and so it's really difficult because they have limits. Some of them have limits on their fuel adjustments, so they're renegotiating contracts and all of that, but that's lagging. It lagged the increase in the price of diesel. So the president has suggested that we should retire the taxes for 3 months to give everyone a bit of a break. The truckers, I think, would be very much in favor of that because that would take somewhere around 45 cents off the cost of a gallon of diesel and make their life a little bit easier. But that isn't the only thing. The working conditions, truckers have been angry, and we talked about this earlier when the Build Back Better bill was passed for the infrastructure improvements. The truckers were incensed because there wasn't a lot of money earmarked for rest stops. And so they don't have a place where they can stop to go to the bathroom unless they pull into a truck stop where they get, if they park for any length of time, they have to pay a parking fee. It's privately owned, that sort of thing. So they're looking and saying our working conditions are deteriorating. There's been a lack of government support. The government isn't looking to build more rest stops or easier parking spaces for trucks. Texas has a lot of roads and they have a lot of rest stops. But if you go to New Mexico has done a better job than Texas. They have less roads, but they have almost the same number of rest stops. So go figure. And there have been attempts to unionize we have truckers unions, but now there are other unions that are coming in that are looking at owner operators and trying to unionize owner operators, which is kind of interesting because owner operators was created to get away from union trucking. So this could be going full circle. This is one of those that will say, let's check back on this in a couple of months and see where this one comes out. Here at home, we know that the fuel costs have gone up sharply and the loads for the truckers to move are falling. And you go, wait, Chet, wait, hold on. You told us before that the docks were still full and that there was congestion at the ports. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But yeah, the loads for truckers are falling. They're cutting back. Retailers are starting to cut back, and they aren't cutting order. Well, they're not canceling orders, but they're cutting the quantity on orders. So they want the mix, they just don't want the volume. And so that's fewer and fewer trucks and fewer containers. And so things are starting to slow down and move backward. The truckers are looking around and trying to find freight. And so there's a lot of competitive bidding going on. If you've got a truck and you've got a contract with a company and your contract is for X dollars per mile, and they can put that out for a competitive bid because there's more trucks available than there is freight available. So the shoe has moved. Now they're taking those and asking for competitive bids. And the brokers are out there looking for low-cost carriers to take the freight. So if you want a backhaul, it's a competitive bid and you're doing it at cost or below cost. And so the margin now for the truckers at home is starting to go negative. With that, they're parking their trucks and some are trying to sell them off. They're cutting back on their fleets. The fleets have been growing. Demand for trucks has been high all the way through from 2018 all the way through to 2022. And now, as we get into the second half of 2022, we're seeing the demand for trucks start to fall. The owner operators say they're getting crushed. There's not enough loaded miles, and too many are out there looking for freight, and they're willing to take freight at cost or below cost just to get some cash flow. So many of them are starting to sell off the rolling stock, but that's not an answer either. If you're in the trucking business and you have 10 trucks and you're only filling up 4 or 5 of them, you can sell off those other trucks and clear that debt and use that cash to help support the operation and keep yourself going. But the problem now is, unlike autos, used trucks are plentiful because everybody's been out buying new because the cash has been good, and it looked like, you know, we're going to eat at this table for a long time, and now the table is not as full. So we're seeing used trucks, and the prices out there are dropping on those. So trading out the trucks, you may be underwater. You may owe more on the truck than you're going to get. So at that point, you want to park it and struggle with your indebtedness, see if you can renegotiate your loans and all of those kinds of things. The big 5 right now are growing, and they keep growing. The small ones keep dropping out. You go out and you drive any length of time on the interstates, and you can see you get familiar with the truck lines that are doing quite well. You see their trucks all over the place, and you see fewer and fewer of the smaller companies. So it's in tumult. It's not going smoothly. So I mentioned earlier that port congestion has dropped. Seaborne traffic has normalized. That was a quote from one of the trade magazines, and I laughed. And then they had about 15 paragraphs of what is not normal about the current state. But the flow, because China has been locked down for a while, manufacturing has dropped considerably, and so they don't have a lot that they're shipping. They're still shipping, but not. It's not the huge amount that they were shipping before. And as I said, the retailers have started to trim their orders. They're not ordering as much as they were ordering before because they're under pressure. We talked about this last month. They're under pressure to reduce their prices, or reduce their inventory, I'm sorry. And so they're reducing prices to reduce the inventory, but they don't want to replenish that inventory. They're not sure what's going to happen going forward. With inflation, if we start into recession, then people are not going to have the money to sell for a lot of this material, so they don't want to have it on their shelves. So they're being very conservative. They've been very bullish, but now they're being very conservative. They're backing away, and so the port congestion has started to come down. That's from the ship perspective. We still have tens of thousands of containers that still have to be moved and have to be located and either transported by train, because now people want to get away from truck because truck is more expensive. They want to put it all on trains. So trains are still very busy. Trucks are less busy, and the ships are back to a much more normal pace. And the dock utilization is sort of evening out. Now, that doesn't mean that trade has stopped or that everything is functioning as it should. Ships are still leaving harbors in Asia and going out to sea and slow rolling across the sea to time their arrival at the destination at approximately the time that they're going to have dock space. So they've staged this, and now it's starting to work. But that doesn't mean that the ships are working at maximum efficiency. They're working at good fuel efficiency, but they're not necessarily the most efficient use of their assets. So there's still work to do before it becomes more normal. Now, does that mean that those new ships that I mentioned last month that are on order for the end of this year, next year, and into 2024, the smaller ships, what's the impact going to be there? That's still up in the air, but maybe we'll see more movement away from the super big ships with their 24,000 TEU or above 24,000 TEU capacity. We'll see that start to drop down. Samsung, as an indicator here, has dropped their quantity per order about 50%. They're still going to build all of their phones. They're still going to build all of their models, but they're only going to build about half as many as they thought they were going to build. So they've dropped their order quantities for all of their components by about 50%. Some of that's driven by sensors, and some of that is driven by what they see as a softening of the marketplace, and they believe that a lot of this is going to be in inventory. To give you an update on the baby formula we talked about last month, Abbott Labs had the problem with the outbound quality, and the FDA shut down the operation. That created a shortage a few months later, and the shortage got the presidential action. Abbott got cleaned up. They redid their certification, and they started making and shipping. And then we had huge rainstorms in Michigan, where this plant is located, and it flooded the plant again. And so they are back to having to clean up the plant. They have to get the FDA in and get certified again, and then they can start to make and ship baby formula. In all of that, just this week, it was reported that another baby died in January, and it has been traced back to the formula from Abbott that they were selling in January before they got shut down. So Abbott's got some problems, and they're pretty dire, and it probably will mean that there'll be a shakeup in that industry. They'll change names. Somebody will buy them out, and hopefully they'll do a better job. I was asked about negotiations after the last session, and I thought I would spend just a few minutes of time with you to go over some key things about negotiations. First of all, you have to understand that we all have been negotiating pretty much since we were born. As newborns, we get uncomfortable, we cry, we get our diapers changed, we get fed, and we get a positive response. And we learn that if we make that noise, we're going to get something good for it. And so we've started to learn about negotiation at that point. And as children, a little bit older, we know that if we're good, we will get, a prize, or we will get dessert, or we will get something. So we learn that, we can get rewards here if we do certain things. It's negotiated. And then especially if we have siblings, we have to figure out how we can get our siblings to agree to allow us to watch the programs we want to watch on TV. Now, today this may not be an issue. Everyone's running around with a cell phone. Everyone's running around with an iPad rather, and there are still real televisions, but most houses have more than one. When I grew up, we only had one, and somebody had to get up and go turn the channel. So I'm talking from age here. But So we've been negotiating forever, but how do we do it in a more formal setting? And I think that was where the question was headed. They didn't want to know that they've always been negotiating, but we want to make it a little bit more professional, and we want to come at it from an approach. So our overall process then is just 4 basic steps. We want to relate. We want to have some relationship here that with someone else or with another company. We have to explore it and see what's the benefit and what else could we possibly gain from it. Could we get better? And then, excuse me, going the wrong way, Chet. There you go. Okay. So we explore that relationship, and then we make a proposal. We say, we think we should do this. And ultimately, we get an agreement. Now, our agreement may not be 100% of what we proposed, but we've got a conversation going, we get an agreement, and we do something, and then we can negotiate and negotiate, negotiate. So that's the process. That's how a negotiation works. So the deal here is to get to a win-win. Win-win is when both sides have identified their needs, and each side understands the relative importance of their needs and the other's needs. And then there's an exchange of different bits and pieces to give and to get. And overall, we are in balance and we reach that win-win. If we do, both parties will be satisfied with the outcome. Sure, we may have left a little money on the table, but it's going to be good for us. We can go with this. And both parties come away saying basically the same thing. We work to make the contract succeed because it's a good contract. It works for both of us, and both companies are engaged. And we'd be willing to do business together in the future. This isn't a one-off. We expect that we'll continue. And so if we do this correctly, it works to the benefit of us and to the other party. So what are the steps? Well, we have to prepare for the negotiation. And this is the absolute key. Good preparation will win almost all the time. There's very little that happens that wasn't prepared for. You have to do your homework. You have to study. You have to know who the company is that you're working with. You have to know their history. You have to know all their people. You have to be prepared when you go. And then you utilize the win-win approach. We're going to do this. We're going to try and keep it in balance. But you shoot high. You don't go into the negotiation saying, I want a 10% reduction in cost. Okay. Yeah, that's fine with us. And they get up and walk away. Well, they agreed to 10%, and that's what you asked for. But how much would they have agreed to? You don't know. So go in and ask for 25, go in and ask for 30, and they'll laugh and they'll roll around on their side of the table, and then they'll say, okay, let's get serious. And then you bring it down to what is realistic and what is negotiable, but shoot high. What else would you like? Put it all out there. And this is what we want. We want 100%. We want all of this. And then understand that you're gonna end up with something less than that, but it's okay. Use clear and concise language. Do not get into euphemistic language and yeah, we'll handle that at the time of shipping. No. No, we're going to handle it in the contract. We're going to specify it now. If we want to refer to something else, then let's put that in the contract and refer to it within the contract. Because otherwise, I don't know what I'm signing up for. You could add cost, and I might not be able to fight it. So, clear and concise language. If you're in the negotiation and you're in negotiator mode, ask questions and listen closely. Asking questions is the fastest way to learn, and it puts you in control of what's going on at that time in the negotiation. You ask questions, they respond to your question, you ask another question. And if you're good at questioning, you can lead the whole process simply by questioning. Some more things to think about. You need to build solid relationships. You can't, you can, I've done it, you don't want to, walk in the first time you've ever met someone and start negotiating a new contract. You might want to start then, but you're not going to get to fruition in that first meeting 99% of the time. I've been lucky, managed a couple of good coups, but it was pure luck. There was no skill involved. We have to act ethically and honestly. We have to do that ourselves, and we have to assume that the other side is doing it as well. If they prove that they're not, then we probably need to walk away. We want to make concessions reluctantly. We don't want to give up much. We don't want to give up. We want to be difficult about it. Ultimately, we know we're going to give up some things, but we need to set a priority list. These are the things we have to have. These are the things we need to get from this negotiation. And we list that. And then as we get further and further down, these would be the nice to have. And if we could get these, that'd be okay. And so when it's time for us to start giving concessions, we can start giving up, oh, well, if we got that, it'd be okay. We give those up first. We don't want to get up to the point where we're giving away the things we need to have. We have to be patient. We need to relax and be patient. Let things happen in time. And if it doesn't all happen today, that's okay. We've made progress. We didn't get to the end. We'll come back to it. Be culturally literate. Understand who you're dealing with. Are they, you know, if you're a US English-speaking person and you're negotiating in Mexico with a Mexican company, be literate. Understand what that means. Understand how they act, what their expectations are. It isn't a language thing, it's a cultural thing. If you're dealing with someone from Japan, if you're dealing with someone from China, if you're dealing with someone from Canada, if you're dealing with someone from the West Coast or someone from the East Coast, their culture is somewhat different. Be literate, understand their culture. What is it they do? What is it they want? How do they react? Do they laugh at your jokes? Seriously. Don't forget, you need to understand your strengths and your weaknesses and their strengths and their weaknesses. They're going to try and mask, but figure it out. Work to understand. Know the people involved. Try to meet them before you get into a negotiation so that you know how they are. You've got some sort of history with them. You've met before. You've had conversations on the phone. All of that. Bring that to the table. Define and prioritize your issues, and then know your timetable and know your tendencies and your style. If all of that fails, then BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Can we continue with the current arrangement for the next 2 months until we can negotiate a new agreement? If we can't agree, what's the next best option? Do we walk away? Do we find somebody else? Or do we come back and try again? We need to know that before we start. It's the first one of the 7 habits, right? Start with the end in mind. And we need to start there and work our way back. So what would you like to discuss? We had some good things that came our way last time, and we'll be talking about these in the next month or so. Some of them we've already talked about. So these are in the slide deck so you can see them. If you've got other things that you'd like to bring up, feel free. Our 2022 on-site calendar classes. We're doing face-to-face classes in Juarez currently. We're planning on doing some face-to-face classes here in El Paso later this summer, early the fall. So if you're interested in taking classes, let us know. Talk to Deanna and she can help you. Comments? Things that you like? We're right on track. We're about a minute and a half over. So thank you all.
Thank you, Chet, as always.
Yeah, if you've got anything that you want,
Thank you,
shoot
Chet.
me a note.
Thank you.
Have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
También lo podemos sacar de una vez y nada más tú y yo sabemos que está en investigación. ¿Por cómo lo vamos a sacar?